I just got back from a couple of weeks in Andalusia, Spain, and wow, this trip totally shook up how I see street photography. I've been shooting for years, but something about the colours and the chaos and those little quiet moments in Spain all hit a bit different. So in this video, I'm sharing 8 things I learned while shooting across the region. And some of these things have completely changed how I approach my street photography, and they might just do the same for you. So let's get right into it. To me, Andalusia was all about colour, but maybe the time of year that I visited might have had something to do with that, with all the festivities going on for springtime. But colour was everywhere, from sort of the religious iconography to winding streets and vibrant patterns of flamenco dresses. At first, I was shooting in black and white on this trip, because that's what I've been doing pretty much the last few months, and I thought, well, maybe all the colours might be a bit overwhelming or make for distracting compositions. But it was such a beautiful, colourful place that I quickly realised I really wanted to switch to colour, and I needed to work really hard to try and make some compelling frames that weren't that overwhelming. When I was in Cordoba photographing the Battle of the Flowers Festival, I did end up getting pretty overwhelmed because it was a lot going on and vibrant colours were everywhere, but I persevered and came across this scene of 2 boys collecting carnations from the ground. And what really caught my eye about the scene wasn't the brightness of the colour, but more of the subdued pastel palette. Colour doesn't always need to be super saturated and in your face, and it can be very powerful in a more subdued way. And this actually ended up being one of my favourite shots of the day. The colours and the action all work harmoniously across the frame. I think, as we all know, colour can convey a lot of different emotions. It can tell you about the weather, the mood, the rhythm of a place, and in some of my favourite shots from the trip, colour is what really drives the whole image. Not the subject or the gesture, just that brilliant flash of colour. If you're more used to working in monochrome, or maybe you don't have much focus on colour in your photography, it could be quite a good idea to challenge yourself to see colour as something to compose with. For example, think in colour palettes and use them to contrast or harmonise or try and evoke specific feelings, and let colour lead you into what you actually photograph and maybe even become the focal point of your images. One of the biggest things I learned on my trip was about how to build stronger frames, and specifically the difference between complex and complicated. Let me explain. It's something I thought about before, but Andalusia really made it click for me. When I was walking through a narrow alley in Cordoba, I was really trying to photograph a layered scene of people walking past, like a colourful background, and then the balconies above. But I just couldn't make a composition work, and I knew it was just trying to force it, and it was going to end up making images that just looked a bit messy. There was too much going on, and I was trying to include all of it in the frame. That's when I kind of racked my brains and remembered that the difference between a compelling frame and a confusing one comes down to intent. And by intent, I mean thinking about the purpose of the images I wanted to take by working out what the elements I'm trying to include say about the scene, rather than just trying to cram in as much information as possible. Complexity invites the viewer in, but complication just overwhelms them. So I started slowing down a bit and making more deliberate decisions. Instead of trying to force everything into a single frame, I asked myself, what's the actual relationship between the elements in front of me? Is there an anchor or a focal point that I can add more elements to around it? And how are the layers supporting each other? And that shift really helped me to begin to form more thoughtful compositions that had some more complexity, but weren't that complicated. To do this yourself, you can try treating the frame like a stage. Like, every element plays a role, and if something doesn't add to the image, think about maybe cutting it out or repositioning your frame, and you really want the photograph to feel rich with information, but not overcrowded. There's a huge difference between taking photos of things and taking photos about them. And maybe that sounds a little bit cheesy, but stick with me on this one. This sort of came to me while watching flamenco dancers get ready to perform on a big stage in front of a crowded square. There were a lot of photographers there, and everyone seemed to be firing off shots, trying to get the pose or the costumes on stage. And then, of course, the dance looked incredible, but all those images were of the same thing, of the dance itself. So I decided to step back a bit and watch. And what struck me more than the performance itself was the dancers actually getting ready or practicing or watching on nervously from the edges of the stage. Their expressions and nervous energy told a story about performance, about culture, attention, that kind of thing. And those became the images that I wanted to take, these small little moments of human emotion rather than the performance itself. Whenever you're on the street looking for photos, or if you find yourself in a new place or abroad, in my opinion, it can really pay off to ask yourself, what's this place about? Like, how does it feel? What about the rhythm, the culture, the loneliness, time passing? Once you've got an idea about how a place feels and your relationship to what it's about and what it means to you, you'll then probably be amazed about how your framing, your timing, and your storytelling completely change when you shoot with that kind of intention. Let's talk about what seems to be everyone's favourite photography subject on the internet, gear.
No.
I brought just one camera and one lens to Andalusia, and I spent a lot of time using it completely wrong. Getting my exposure wrong, fumbling with focus, even accidentally leaving the lens cap on once or twice. But in my defence on that, my camera has got a light leak, so I was trying to prevent it from causing a problem between shots. I'm not totally incompetent. But anyway, here's the thing, none of that really mattered, right? No one cared what camera I was using, no one asked about the megapixels or the film stock, or maybe they did, but I don't understand because I only know 10 words in Spanish. But the only thing that made a difference to me was whether I was seeing clearly or not. One night we found ourselves in a cave in the Sacromonte area of Granada, where Roma people have lived for hundreds of years, and it's probably where flamenco dance originated. We were there to watch a flamenco performance, and it was absolutely amazing. But it was also really dark, and I only had 400 speed film. And did that mean I didn't take any photos? No, I opened up the lens as wide as it would go to 2.5 and I handheld on a 15th of a second. And I don't really usually like slow shutter speed images, but I had no choice here, so I leaned into it and I was actually pleasantly surprised with some of the images. If you don't have the right gear, it doesn't matter. In fact, it can actually force you to get more creative and experiment. And the real point is this one. Gear isn't ever the problem. Our attention is, our curiosity is, get our timing is, and get those things right and a potato with a lens mount would probably do the trick. I used to only raise my camera to my face when something felt worthy, but in Andalusia I started shooting things like my hotel room, the empty streets, the moments waiting around or walking from one place to the next, and maybe the details I saw that caught my attention on the way. When I reviewed some of those images, it didn't feel like a series of isolated images, but on some days it felt more like a visual diary, and I could sort of see how my brain was working and what I liked about the scene, the composition, or the colour or detail that I shot. I wasn't just capturing events or moments that I really thought were going to be great photos, I was just capturing my experience of being in a place. I was keeping my eye in and observing things even when it was quiet around. We often hear that street photography needs to include people, but it doesn't always have to be really dramatic or surprising. And sometimes the most evocative images are the ones in between, the waiting, the passing and the quiet. And this is such a great thing to bear in mind when you find yourself in a quiet or boring place, or somewhere that you're not really sure what to actually take photographs of. Even in a busy place with a lot going on, there's just no guarantee of a good photo. It can be days or weeks or even months until you get a photo that you think, yeah, this is what I'm really trying to achieve. And to be honest, in a world that's centered around urgency and social media and constantly feeling pressure to post and share and make amazing work, it can be super off-putting when you hear the opinion that a really great street photograph is rare. Honestly, on this trip I shot about 13 rolls of film, so that's like 470 odd photographs, and of those maybe 20 or so are decent, and maybe just one or two are something that I'm actually really proud of. And that was in an environment outside of my usual one, with loads of stuff going on, colour and festivals and life, a different culture. Maybe I've just got super high standards for myself, but if you do too and sometimes feel down by your lack of progress or lack of really great images, just try and remember that it's really, really hard and it takes a lot of time and practice to get anything decent. So a great way to get over that is just to document your day, put in the steps, and over time you'll give yourself the best chance of getting more photos that you're really happy with. This one hit me hard in Seville. I was walking through the insane Seville fair, which was absolutely packed with people, all dressed up in their finest, most colourful outfits. There were men and women on horses and horse-drawn carriages, dancing on the streets, spilling out of tents. There was colour and noise and light and shadow everywhere. And I just completely froze. I didn't know where to point my camera. Every second felt like I was missing 10 shots. But after a while, I realised the paralysis came from a lack of decision making. I wasn't choosing, I was reacting. And street photography rewards decisive, intentional choices, in my opinion. This goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video. I tried to think about complexity, but not complicated. I started narrowing things down, looking for a subject or a shape and then light. I picked an anchor and then maybe thought about composition and then waited or reacted to something happening in the frame. I really think great street photos are the result of tiny decisions stacking up. Where to stand, when to wait, what to include, what to cut. So if you start thinking and being more aware of those choices, your photography will sharpen naturally over time. Let's be honest, failure is brutal. Even in a place as beautiful as Andalusia, I made so many terrible photos. I missed focus, got the exposure wrong, chose the wrong timing, I was too busy wrapped up in the moment and missed the shot. It can be really tempting to take those moments personally, to feel like you've regressed or wasted your time. But in reality, is that true failure is the foundation of growth. Every missed frame teaches you something if you let it. And actually, an image that I really enjoyed from the trip was a total mistake where I'd knocked the shutter speed by accident. It was blurry and grainy and badly exposed. But it felt right, it captured the moment, the mood and the chaos, and it wasn't what I intended, but it kind of worked. So when you fail, don't delete it right away, try looking and reflecting on your mistakes, and you might just find something that you didn't know you were trying to say. Walking through Andalusia with a camera in hand reminded me exactly why I fell in love with street photography in the first place. The rhythm of walking, the tiny surprises around every corner, the light and sounds and atmosphere of an unfamiliar place, and the little grin someone gives you when they realise you're taking their photo. It's easy to get caught up in the improvement and results of street photography, but if you're not enjoying the process, what's the point? And honestly, I find myself taking it all a bit too seriously sometimes. I just try to let myself wander around. And also sometimes just sit still and observe and smile at strangers and compliment them, take the photo even though it might not work. And the joy is in the doing, not just the final image. As I've said before on this channel a lot, what I really love the most about street photography is the endless scope to practice and experiment with new approaches or capturing life in public. But sometimes we can get lost with how to get better. So check out this video next, which explores what I wish I'd known when I first started street photography.